Hi everybody. So it is June on the range and everybody's reading Westerns and I have my first DNF. Oh my goodness. So, okay. Part of the assignment was to read at least one book by Zane Grey. So I picked up both the Kindle and the audiobook from over on Chirp. Now Chirp, as I've mentioned, I'm not affiliated or sponsored by Chirp in any way, but I absolutely love the service because there's no membership fee and they have excellent deals. So this one was like $2 US. So I grabbed it, thinking, hey, it'll be great for June on the range. Ooh. I think I was watching Criminali's introduction to June on the Range, and he mentioned how Westerns have kind of fallen out of favor, after probably the 80s or so. They just weren't as popular. I mean, every few years a new one will appear, like Westworld, or there will be a big movie. There's that one most recently with that what's his face was just acquitted for. That one I think is a Western. But Criminali mentioned that part of the reason might be as time passes and we become more sensitive to the absolutely terrible treatment of our Native friends, and the just awful implications of the whole idea of the cowboys versus the Indians and so on. A lot of what happened becomes less romanticized and less exciting and much, much less palatable. And that's unfortunately what happened with me trying to read this book. I picked Betty Zane by Zane Grey. Oof. The book is set, in the late 1800s. It's about a collection of pioneers who are literally, they call themselves Indian hunters, and they have a tracker who goes and finds them and kills them. And they talk about, oh, we saw Indian prints outside the camp, and it takes place during a time, I guess there was a siege. I was looking up it's considered a historical novel, and Zane Grey wrote it after he found a diary from one of his family members. And Betty Zane was a real person in history. She's considered a heroine. I'm just going to read the wiki entry. A heroine of the Revolutionary War, daughter of, and then there's like her whole lineage. 3 of the Zane brothers migrated from West Virginia, founded the first settlement in Wheeling, Ohio County, and then the rest of the Zane family joined them. According to a historical marker, on September 11, 1782, the Zane family was under siege in Fort Henry by Native American allies of the British during the siege. While Betty was loading a Kentucky rifle, her father was wounded and fell from the top of the fort right in front of her. The captain of the fort said, "We've lost 2 men, one Mr. Zane and another gentleman. We need black gunpowder." Betty's family home was where the gunpowder store was for Fort Henry's defense. So Betty ran to retrieve the gunpowder, returned safely. They held off the Native Americans and lived. And the siege of Fort Henry took place in 1782. Native American and Loyalist forces attacked the small garrison of Fort Henry, which was being defended by 42 men under the command of Colonel David Shepard of the Ohio Militia. When the garrison ran low on ammunition, Betty Zane volunteered to leave the garrison to retrieve more ammo. Her actions are credited with allowing the defenders to hold the fort, which remained under American control. And Betty Zane's great-grandnephew, the author Zane Grey, wrote a historical novel entitled Betty Zane, also republished as The Last Ranger. One of the main events in the story is the tale of Zane fetching supplies. And he's published the book himself in 1903, and he later named his daughter Betty Zane after his famous aunt. So I figured it's about a pioneer woman. It might be interesting, but I just couldn't. I might go back to it later. I might give it another try, but oh boy, it's rough going. The way that we haven't even. I'm about half an hour into the audiobook, and we haven't even met any of the savages yet, and the way that they're talked about is just really, really not comfortable for my modern, delicate ears. Oh my goodness. And I'm sure when I was a kid, a lot of this would have just gone over my head. When you grow up with certain tropes in pop culture. But yeah, I couldn't take it. I'm sorry. It was a product of its time, I'm sure, but I'm just not enjoying it. No. So first DNF. So I'm going to do the Rootin' Tootin' Western June on the Range tag. I watched a couple of them. Michael K. Vaughan did it, and a few others that I've been watching, so I thought I'll jump on the tag wagon again. So, number 1, A Ways Out West. Have you ever been to the American West? No. I haven't traveled extensively. The only places I've been in the U.S. are around the Northeast. I grew up on the Michigan border. I did take a trip to kind of New York, Connecticut, when I was a teenager, but I mostly just kind of saw them from the bus. And I've seen a few really scary bus stations, but no, I've never been out to the American West. Dry Gulch. What's the smallest town you've ever visited? How small is your town now? Now, I live about an hour west of Toronto, and the city I live in runs between 240 and 260,000, depending on the census year. It's also a student town. That's one of the reasons the numbers change a little bit. Well, actually, Waterloo's kind of considered more of the student town. And much like a lot of places, there's some urban sprawl. So anything kind of... Okay, Southern Ontario is basically the most heavily populated, industrialized area in all of Canada. So probably a good third of the Canadian population lives within a couple hundred kilometers. So if you go from Windsor to Ottawa, you've got a very, very large segment of the population of Canada in that area. So it's just the way it is. So there's not a lot of small towns, but there are a lot of little, when you go a little ways out of the 401, there's little sparse towns that are sort of outcroppings and suburbs of the main cities. Smallest town I've ever visited. Probably just, the wide places in the road that appeal to tourists, places like Grand Bend. Growing up around the Great Lakes areas, there were always little towns that you could go to, but I don't know. I don't, like I said, I'm not widely traveled. Anyway, where the buffalo roam. Have you ever seen an American bison in person? I don't think I've seen one up close, but I am sure there was at least one at the Detroit Zoo when I was there, and I'm pretty sure there was at least one kind of far off in the distance. One of the times when I went to the African Lion Safari. A little ways out of town here, we have a wildlife enclosure called the African Lion Safari, and there's a lot of exotic animals from a lot of places in the enclosure. There's, you can go to the baboon area, there's lions there, there's all kinds of things, and you stay in your car and you get to kind of drive around the enclosure and you get to see all the different animals, and then you can go to there's another area where you can go to and you can see all the exotic birds, and then there's they have like an elephant show, and no, elephants are not hoofed animals. They have toenails, not hoofs. Just saying. Um, what is the largest hoofed animal you've ever seen? Oh, there is a giraffe. Or is there more than one giraffe? Well, I mean, I only saw the one. Yeah, it came like right up to my car window. It was pretty cute. At the African lion safari, but I'm going to say the largest hoofed animal I've probably ever been close to is a cow. In my hometown, there's a petting zoo called the Animal Farm, and we used to go there pretty frequently. And and you can go right up and pet the cows. They're very big, very smelly creatures. Do you have evidence that you live near coyotes? Now, coyotes they're the kind of scavengers that can live literally anywhere. And we have them nearby. One of the lines I answer for is the city. And I occasionally will get calls and they're like, there's coyotes on the Canamera Parkway. And I'm like, they're wild animals. They can't do anything about them. I mean, they can come look at them with you if you want. There's not really much we can do. Or I'll get a call and they're like, well, what am I supposed to do? And I just tell them, lock down your garbage cans because that's what they're looking for, and keep your pets inside because they will eat them. But yes, there are coyotes in the area. What's your history with westerns, novels, TV, movies? I've never been a big fan of westerns. I haven't read a lot of western novels. I did read one novel by Ed Kurtz, it was a novella. And I think I'm going to try to read the Boone, at least the first installment of the Boone series by Ed Kurtz. I tried to read Blood Meridian, couldn't get into it a couple times. I like the audiobook of No Country for Old Men, although that's a more modern day version of the Western. And keeping in mind that traditional Westerns they have to be set in the American West or Southwest during the period of the Restoration to about 1890. And I guess because it's the expansion of the frontier, anything outside of that is kind of considered like a revision or, a different version. Like it's not a classical Western. Novels, like again, I tried Lonesome Dove. It was another one I started and then lost the book. So, TV, movies. Okay, whether you want to believe it or not, Little House on the Prairie, yes, is very much a Western. It's set during the time period. It's about the expansion into the West and the settlers and all the stuff that they did. And I grew up watching the show. And I read the books as a kid, but I didn't revisit them again until I was an adult a few years ago. And they're really great stories. And I found out a little bit more later that there was quite a bit of revision going on about the role of one of the tropes that is popular in Westerns is sort of this concept of American individualism and self-sufficiency. And sort of as they expand into the West, they're kind of taming the frontier. But because as Laura Ingalls Wilder was writing down her life story, there's a suggestion that her daughter revised a lot of it because her daughter's something of a libertarian and took out the role of government agency in the family's success, or how they survived all those years, which I thought it was kind of an interesting tension. TV, and I will go to my grave swearing Breaking Bad is a Western. It's a lot of other things. It's noir, it's crime, it's whatever, but it is very much a Western. There's even a train robbery. Fight me. Movies, again, not a big fan, but I really liked The Unforgiven. I thought it was a great movie. I watched all but the last 15 minutes of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I never did get to finish that. Was it Good and the Bad and the Ugly? Oh, same thing with Seven Samurai. No. Well, Seven Samurai isn't actually a Western, but American Western version that is based on Seven Samurai is. So, um, yeah, I'm just not, like I said, I remember Young Guns and shows like that, when I was a kid, but not really a big Western fan. You see, I have to really, really kind of dredge into the memory. Diamond Lil at the Rialto Saloon, what's your relationship with alcohol? Yeah, I don't drink anymore. Probably because my favorite drink is rye, and I'm very stupid when I get drunk, and I do a lot of idiotic things, and I figure I can make an ass of myself just as well sober as I can drunk. Probably save me some money, too. Ever had a friendship with a bartender? When I was in university, I spent a lot of time down at a local club called the Volcano, and the bar staff were great. So I would consider a bartender at least an acquaintance. So she was also the owner. Her name was Lisa. And after the bar closed, she had a couple. She ended up having a few kids. And last time I saw her, it's kind of funny. She was a nurse tending my wound at the hospital, which was a little weird. But I mean, she did really well for herself. So she was a great nurse too. And I used to, even though by that time I had mostly quit drinking, I used to do karaoke every weekend when they had it at this one club, and I would always say hi to the bartenders and stuff, and they knew me as a regular at the karaoke. The city, but yeah, I mean, like real close friends, like we hung out and had coffee and stuff. No, I'm not going to say who did that. It was usually just in the context of their jobs. The City Slicker from back east, what do you consider the best Western you've ever read? I haven't read enough to make a comparison. Maybe I'll find a best Western this June on the Range or next year or some other time through BookTube. The Man with the Badge, have you ever been in charge of other people? What's the most authority you've ever handled? Would you be good at it? Nope, not a leader, not in the least. I spent 2 years on the board of directors at the community radio station. Everybody absolutely despised me, and I actually came across an email from one of the other volunteers to the president of the board of directors telling him that I lack leadership skills, which, I mean, if that's the worst thing anybody has to say about me, I'm fine with it. I'm not a leader. The Tombstone Kid, have you ever fired a gun? But no. Been a gun aficionado? No. Been shot? No. I don't know if I've made my stance clear before. I am vehemently opposed to guns. As a Canadian, I believe the more regulation, the better. We have had a few mass shootings, but nothing like the level in the States, because gun laws work, gun control works. Personally, if it was up to me, every single gun on the planet would be stripped down, melted, and made into playground equipment, and that's my stance on it. And I think that it's more than just guns themselves. It's the gun culture that really, as much as I enjoy crime and horror stories, I think that American mass shootings are horrific, and they're deeply rooted in gun culture. And that's one thing that we don't have in Canada. You know why we don't have it? Because when you don't have a fucking gun, you learn how to solve your problems another way. And especially when you got politicians like fucking Lauren Boebert, who is an absolute moron, saying stuff like, oh, well, America only has 41% of the guns in the world, and we need more guns, and a gun-free zone is just the most dangerous place ever. You have two gun nuts pointing guns at each other in a non-gun-free zone, you're going to have a problem. You have people who don't have guns not pointing guns at each other. They're going to be considerably less dangerous. And personally, you know what? If you really, really, really feel the need to kill someone, Do it with your bare hands. Make it fucking count. Anyway, I'm sure if I have any Second Amendment fans on my viewer list, I'm gonna lose them. But yeah, I have a hard stance when it comes to guns. I do not like or support, the freedom. I gotta have a gun. No, that's a little tiny penis extender. That's a pussy stick. You don't fucking need it. Anyway, yeah, I'm pretty opposed to guns. It ain't the bullet that gets you, it's the fall. How would you ideally like to cash in your chips? I would like to just be asleep and not wake up one day. Tag some owl hoots. No, I don't do that. I'm not a tag person. And yeah, I got a little bit melodramatic at the end there. I apologize. So to make things a little bit lighter, sorry about that. That was an alarm. Oh my. It just means that somebody has a low battery somewhere, but that is one of the most alarming alarms ever. All right, so on the lighter side, I was looking at TV tropes, and I was looking at the, what constitutes a cowboy and so on. And I came across a description of a novel that sounds absolutely hilarious. It's called River of Teeth by Sarah Gailey. And so I had to buy it. So that's going to be the next thing I read. I think it's finalist for the 2017 Nebula Award for Best Novella. And it is an alternate history. It's set in 1890, so it is a traditionally, at least in the Western time period. But the premise is that apparently at one point, and this is true, the United States government they were considering importing hippos to set free in the Louisiana swamps as a meat source. So yeah, we never got hippos in the States, and so the description of the book says, in the early 20th century, the United States government concocted a plan to import hippos into the marshlands of Louisiana to be bred and slaughtered as an alternative meat source. This is true. Other things about hippos: they are savage, they are fast, and their jaws can snap a man in two. This was a terrible plan. Contained within this volume is an 1890s America that might have been a bayou overrun by feral hippos and mercenary hippo wranglers from around the globe. It is a story of Winslow Houndstooth and his crew. It is a story of their fortunes. It is a story of his revenge at the publisher's request. Okay, yeah, but yeah, so I bought that, and the idea of hippo riding cowboys it just tickles me. So that's going to be the next thing I read. All right, so yeah, if you have a comment and you want to blast me for my anti-gun stance, I'm not really all that apologetic, but go ahead. And, if I do lose subscribers, I'm not sorry. I mean, I don't mean to offend anybody, but I find the problem of mass shootings deeply, deeply upsetting, and it's getting worse, and it's, they're leveling up. I think that's the part that just offends me at the deepest level. It's not enough to be the worst mass shooter in history, but every mass shooter has to be the next worst mass shooter. They level up like it's a video game. So, anyway, hope you're in lots of horror. Have a great day.